Nurhaci, the unifier of Manchu tribes, openly rebelled against Ming in 1616. In 10 years, he occupied the northeastern corner of the Chinese Empire. His son, later known as Taizong, followed a policy of relying on captured Chinese officials for administrative advice and set up a government in the Ming style. He also organized the Chinese into a corps, manufacturing and using the latest firearms introduced by the Portuguese. Taizong extended his territory into Mongolia and Korea, named his dynasty Qing, or Pure, and made ready for the conquest of China. But he died before realizing his dream. The opportunity came in 1644 when the ancient capital Peking fell to Chinese rebels, and the Ming emperor hanged himself on a hill overlooking the Forbidden City. A Ming general asked the Manchus for help, and the Manchus stayed on after recovering Peking. In the next 20 years, remnant Ming forces succumbed one after another to superior Manchu warriors, except in Taiwan, where the Ming loyalist Zhang Chung-gung held out after expelling the Dutch. He is worshipped to this day. It was not till 1683 that the truly great Qing emperor, Kangxi, eliminated this holdout and became sovereign of all China. Kangxi was equally successful in his campaigns to secure northern and western border areas. In 1689, he resisted Russian encroachment on the Amur River and made a favorable settlement, the first treaty ever signed between China and a Western power. He personally led an army across the Gobi Desert to rescue the Mongols from the Dzungars and forcibly installed a new leader in Tibet. For the first time in Chinese history, peace prevailed over the northern frontiers from Manchuria in the east all the way to Tibet in the west. Enormous savings in defense expenditures enabled the empire to reduce taxes and still enjoy an overflowing treasury. The Manchus' durable hold over China owed much to their policy of ruling the country with native talent under native institutions. Kangxi carried out this tradition with style. He absorbed the time and energy of Chinese scholars with monumental projects, including the compilation of Ming history, a phrase dictionary, a compendium of paintings and calligraphy, the Kangxi Dictionary containing more than 50,000 characters, and the complete works of Zhu Xi, the most influential Confucianist since the 12th century. Another gigantic project, the synthesis of books and illustrations of ancient and modern times, was not completed till after Kangxi's death. This massive encyclopedia, comprising 5,000 volumes, was printed in 1728 with brass movable type. Sometimes the emperor ordered his aides to produce calligraphy for him to sign, a display of his admiration for Chinese culture. Kangxi's 60-year record inspired his grandson, Qianlong, another great emperor of the Qing dynasty, to keep himself in excellent shape by leading a disciplined life. Nostalgia for the vitality of the life of hunters stirred his Manchu blood. He ordered a scroll of 100 horses in a natural environment to revive this delightful vision within his comparatively confining palaces. During Qianlong's reign, the empire was riding on the crest of dynastic fortune. Prosperous citizens enjoying the holidays were faithfully recorded by court painters to amuse the ruler. The unofficial census of 1741, probably on the low side, reported 142 million. This population explosion was accompanied by an increase in arable land and the introduction of fast-ripening types of rice from Champa, large-scale planting of new crops from the Americas, such as corn, sweet potatoes, and peanuts, which thrived even on marginal soils, also contributed to the national wealth. Ambitious for an exalted place in history, Qianlong displayed his military might as well as his cultural splendor. 2 campaigns against the Dzungars extended the western frontier 1,000 miles to the Altai and Pamir Mountains, deep into Central Asia. This vast area became known as Xinjiang, the new dominion. These victories recalled the glories of Han and Tan and added 600,000 square miles to the empire. Qianlong's reception of Cossacks, bringing tribute horses, symbolized the power of the Central Kingdom. But other campaigns, conducted to round out his victories to the magic number of 10, resulted in hollow triumphs. For example, his attempt to subjugate Aborigines in the Southwest cost 3 times as much as campaigns in the Northwest. The loss of lives, the brutalizing of his armies, and the corruption of his generals were ultimately even more expensive than the drain on his treasury. Qianlong took great pride in his mastery of Chinese learning. His lifelong literary output, indifferent in quality, was astonishing in quantity. He personally inscribed his own verses and placed his seals on works of art, including thousands of masterpieces in his great collection of paintings and calligraphy. He sponsored the compilation and editing of works for the Imperial Manuscript Library of more than 36,000 volumes. As many as 15,000 scribes spent nearly 20 years to hand copy 7 sets. The catalog included many items not copied, making a total of slightly more than 10,000 titles, surpassing in number all other previous Chinese bibliographies. With this undertaking, Qianlong intended to expunge from Chinese literature all slanderous reference to the Manchus and other alien rulers. As a result, thousands of works were destroyed. He searched between the lines for covert derogatory remarks about the Manchus. Luckless writers, proofreaders, editors, and printers paid with their lives for as little as 1 or 2 lines of poetry construed as being treasonous. Such literary terrorism drove scholars to immerse themselves in ancient texts within their secluded studios. Without imperial patronage, the great novel, The Dream of the Red Chamber, was born in the 18th century. The saga of a powerful and rich family suddenly fallen into disgrace. This tragic story of unfulfilled love between 2 cousins was constructed within a symbolic framework. The lovers lived in a luxurious and degenerate world modeled after the childhood environment of the author, whose grandfather once played host to the Kangxi Emperor. His family, like the heroes, fell from prosperity into hardship. The author could scarcely anticipate the future shock of Western imperialism 1 century later, but his dream was to prove prophetic in its parallel to the Chinese Empire. At the time of America's independence, China's decadence was reflected in the exquisite toys of the aging emperor. The last years of Qianlong's long reign were consumed by his extraordinary indulgence of a handsome boy in the Imperial Guard, who was trusted to control revenue, personnel, security, and to advance or ruin officials at will. As the Chinese proverb would say, he looked upon the people as his meat. With a network of henchmen, he exacted bribes from all provinces. Toward the end of the 18th century, population pressure and misrule began to disrupt the national economy. Peasant uprisings and natural disasters, including at least 17 floods of the Yellow River, greatly sapped the strength of the empire. In 1820, the Emperor Daoguang took over, but he remained a captive of corrupt and incompetent Manchu nobles. This privileged clique ruled China through inefficient bureaucracy and outmoded military forces, the mainstay of which were the Manchu bannermen, who possessed little or none of the martial spirit of their forebears. The national psychology was ready for escape into hallucinations, and the British saw the profit-making potential of a magic drug called opium. Known in China for centuries as a medicine that relieved pain and anxiety and cured diarrhea, opium was addictive. Its victims became emaciated and lost all will to function as productive members of society. The British had an ideal arrangement in shipping opium from the production centers of India to China in exchange for silver, tea, and silk. India, thus enriched by the trade, would have greater purchasing power for British goods. Opium came in chests of 133 pounds each. From 1800 to 1820, China annually imported an average of 5,000 chests. In 1834, the amount had grown to 22,000 chests, and by 1838 to 40,000 chests. The Chinese began to feel the drain of silver, which was the backing for their currency and the unit of taxation. When inflation became rampant, the emperor appointed Lin Zexu, a stern and resolute scholar official, to prohibit the opium trade in Canton. Lin forced British merchants to surrender their stock of over 20,000 chests for a public burning. British naval retaliation during this so-called Opium War revealed the fundamental defects of the Chinese military establishment, from command to armament. Almost defenseless against the superior British forces, the Manchu court capitulated in 1842 to all the demands of the victor. The Treaty of Nanking, the first of a series of unequal treaties between China and foreign powers, ushered in an era during which more and more cities were open for trading and evangelism. One territory after another was ceded. Higher and higher indemnities were paid. And all foreigners enjoyed extraterritorial rights, not subject to the Chinese law. In 1849, resentment against Manchu misrule burst into open rebellion, led by Hung Shu Chuan, a schoolteacher who had read the translated Bible. Claiming himself to be the younger brother of Jesus Christ, he set out to establish the theocracy Taiping Tiangoa, or Heavenly Kingdom of Great Peace. At first, his soldiers were well disciplined and scored victory after victory. He captured Nanking and made it his capital, ravaged 16 provinces, and entered 600 cities. But his northern expeditionary forces met disaster near Peking, and other reverses slowed the momentum. While the Imperial Army gained the upper hand, Hung Shu Chuan's troops deteriorated in morale and quarrels took place among his generals. The rebellion collapsed in 1864, but it had compelled the Manchu regime to place greater authority into the hands of Chinese generals, who saved the dynasty with newly trained Chinese troops. The scholar Zheng Guofan assumed supreme command over the middle Yangtze Valley, aided by such men as Zhou Tsung-tang, who recovered Chinese Turkestan, and Li Hongzhang, who played a leading role in Chinese diplomacy in the late 19th century. In the last half of the 19th century, a new and increasing threat came from Japan, now westernized enough to compete with her European mentors in grabbing Chinese territories. The Sino-Japanese War of 1894 made Japan the dominant power in East Asia, and China her target for continental conquest. After signing the humiliating 1895 treaty with Japan, Li Hongzhang saw the futility of importing arms and warships without developing native industry. He pushed for modern enterprises in railroads, shipping, coal mining, telegraph, and textile mills. But his project suffered from bureaucratic practices, nepotism, and profiteering. Another high official, Chang Chi-dung, advocated Chinese learning for principles, Western learning for utility. He promoted the study of Western languages and commercial methods and set up military academies and technical schools, as well as an arsenal and an iron foundry. But his classical Confucianist outlook limited him to fighting a rearguard action in preserving the outmoded society. It was Kang Yue who realized that the government itself must be modernized. He injected ideas of evolution and progress into the Confucianist shell and proposed changing the absolute monarchy into a constitutional monarchy. This radical idea had the ear of the young emperor for 100 days in 1898. But the arch-conservative Empress Dowager, who dominated the last 50 years of Qing rule, nipped the reform in the bud by imprisoning the emperor and executing 6 reformers. She tried to manipulate the popular anti-foreign sentiment, a group of grassroots patriots called the Boxers, who claimed Buddhist Taoist divine power over foreign bullets, gained her support. The Boxers first attacked foreign missionaries and their Chinese converts, who vilified Chinese gods and sages and enjoyed special privileges. Next, the Boxers attacked the legations in Peking. This popular rage of 1900 brought on a massive foreign invasion, resulting in the Empress Dowager's flight and one more capitulation. The Boxer Protocol of 1901 laid Peking defenseless and exacted an unbearable sum of indemnity. This burden further diminished the bare substance of life for the masses. The time for reform had long passed, and China was fast becoming a semi-colony under the foreign powers. Sun Yat-sen, a medical doctor with a Western education, realized that her only salvation was revolution. He organized his followers in overseas bases, using the slogan, "Drive out the Tartars and recover China," establish the Republic, and equalize land ownership. His three principles of the people advocated nationalism, democracy, and socialism. After many failures, the revolutionists finally overthrew the Manchu regime in 1911, and the first republic in Asia was born on January 1st, 1912.